Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you are doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today we are going to be taking a look at Forgotten Depths. If you remember, a year or so ago, I did take a look at the prototype of this game, and it has recently started delivering from Kickstarter. And I wanted to thank Peter, the designer of the game, for sending me an extra copy, and I'm giving away that copy right now on the Dungeon Dive Patreon. So I think the contest is going to be running for a couple more days once you hear this on Sunday. So if you want to join the Patreon and have a chance to win a copy of Forgotten Depths, go ahead and do that. So this game is going to be divided, or this review, this overview, I should say, this look at Forgotten Depths is going to be divided into two parts. First part is going to be focusing on the game. And the first part is going to be very positive because I like this game a lot. I think it has some interesting twists on established mechanisms, on tropes, on things that we enjoy from these kinds of dungeon crawl and adventure games. And those twists are just twisty enough that Forgotten Depths feels different. Even though we are participating in the same kind of action verbs, exploring maps, having encounters, fighting bosses, fighting monsters, getting loot, having characters, even though we're doing all of those similar things that we often do in these games, Forgotten Depths just twists all of those things in such a way that makes the game feel a little bit unique, but it's not trying to reinvent the wheel. And so it's pretty easy to grasp the concepts behind the game. So the first part is going to be a pretty positive look at the game. The second part of this video is much more negative, and it has to do with the overall production of the box and rulebook for this game. Because yes, this giant thing right here, here's my hand. It's all floppy. It's like almost the size of a newspaper. This is the rulebook for this game. It is the single largest rulebook I have ever seen in a game for a little card game. And the box is one of the biggest boxes I have seen for a game of its size. As a matter of fact, you might think of this as the first in a series of videos called Small Games in Giant Boxes. And I'm not quite sure if there's going to be other examples, but the second part of this video is very negative because I was incredibly disappointed by the size of the box and the size of the rulebook. And I've talked to many people who received this game in the mail, and they were absolutely shocked. People had sent me messages, emails, commented on Patreon, commented on the Facebook group, like, have you seen the size of Forgotten Depths? And I was not prepared for it. Even though I knew that the box was big, I was in no way prepared for just how huge the box and how huge the rulebook is for this game. But let's do a little basic overview of the game, and then we're going to talk about 5 ways that this game kind of differentiates itself from the others. 5 little twists on core mechanisms, on core concepts that makes Forgotten Depths feel a little bit different. So in Forgotten Depths, you are doing very standard things. You are taking a number of characters. This game plays from 1 to 3, and it scales pretty well at all player counts 1, 2, or 3. You can play a true single lone wolf mode. So you are taking your characters. There are base characters like the rogue and the wizard, and then on the back of each one is a kind of a combo character, so a dual class, a wizard rogue or a rogue fighter. You are taking those characters. You are going to be moving through a map. You are going to be starting at a dungeon entrance, looking for the dungeon floor down to the next level, fighting a boss before you can get to that next level. And you are going to be progressing through levels 1, levels 2, and levels 3 as you move down. And then at the end, actually it's level 1, 2, and 3. And then at the end of level 3, you fight a major boss, and that is how you win the game. There is leveling up. You can collect experience points. You can gain loot. You can make your character better in combat. You will have random encounters. You will have encounters with monsters. And you will be looking for these kind of like great legendary locations within the dungeon in order to gain experience, in order to gain lore and knowledge about the ecology that you are exploring in. Because what this game is really about is you are kind of like map makers. You are adventurers. You aren't necessarily great warriors, but you are going to be going through this dungeon, looking for things of interest, looking for interesting locations, and making a map of your experience of your journey as a cartographer might. So one of the main ways this game is different is in how the map works and how you create the map in a puzzle-like way while you are playing the game. So you always start at the entrance, and then you take your tile, your stairs down. So this is the last tile we're trying to locate. And you mix those stairs up into a few cards and place those into the bottom of your deck. And then everything else is shuffled. And so this is your deck of cards that you're creating your map with. So in most games, you're going to lay out a tile and move your guy into a new tile and do whatever that new tile says. Well, in this game, you're creating a map, and it's kind of like a puzzle-like nature. It's a little bit of a simple tile-laying game because you don't really move your character until you decide to interact with one of the elements on the map tile. And certain elements will block progress. So you need to build your map and then choose which of those things you want to encounter. So there's a door there. There's one of these nodes, and these nodes we will talk about in a little bit. But I really enjoy this aspect of the game, of building out the floor, of kind of mapping your progress through a tunnel or through the dungeon. And it's a kind of represents this kind of slow questing nature. This is a thoughtful adventure through a dungeon, you could say. And so you are building out the map, and then you are choosing, as the map gets built, you are then choosing where to go and what to encounter. So another way that this is different is in the puzzle-like nature of this map creation. Because one of the main things you are looking for are these nodes here. And as those nodes are connected, they will form a certain shape. And those shapes will coincide to these other cards of these legendary locations. And you are looking to create those shapes with those nodes so you can encounter these legendary locations and you can get more experience, maybe fight some strong monsters, maybe get some loot from these places. You have the level 1 legendary locations, which are very easy to create because those only need one node connection. And then you have a level 2, which needs 2 node connections in a straight line. So those are also pretty easy to create. You have the level 3s. These are a little harder to create because you need to create this L shape. And you may find it difficult as you are laying your tiles out to actually create that shape. But this is represented by it being more difficult to find. So these 2 legendary locations are a little more difficult to find, and so building that shape is a little more difficult. And then finally, you have a level 4 shape, and this one is even more difficult to find and even more legendary and will offer even more rewards. So you can kind of choose as you are creating your map. You could choose to take the 2 easy ones and build those out, or kind of push your luck to hope that you can make these shapes to find the more legendary locations. And then each one of these is a different location. So one of these might be a crypt, one of them might be an exterior wall, one of them might be a sunken section of the floor, and then each one of those will have a couple of cards that you can build out that location. And then some of these will have certain things that you have to do, certain tests, or maybe certain monsters that you will have to fight. But as you progress through them, you will learn a little bit about the dungeon. You might gain some lore, some knowledge. You might have to pass some tests or fight some monsters. And then each one of these is going to give you a number of experience points as you encounter it. And so the level 2, you have 2A, 2B, 2C, and these will help you also. So if you come across this one, you might find a plate mail and you might find some new armor or something. Maybe you find these tiny glowing beings, a small glass vial of a clear blue liquid, or maybe you find this library here where you have to face off against a skeletal sentinel before you can find his leather bound grimoire. So just very, very cool. I love this concept. It takes the idea of random encounters, mixes it with a puzzle-like element, so you have to think a little bit about how your characters are going to discover these really cool locations. And there are a whole bunch of those for the different environments. As you work your way through the game, you will find more and more different legendary locations and more things to discover. Another aspect I like, and it does also have to do with this map creation, is how you can choose what you want to encounter and when you want to encounter it. Because as you build out your map, certain elements, certain icons will block progress in that direction. So if I were to lay this card here, I could not continue to lay cards in this direction until I faced off against that monster. If I were to lay this card here, I could not continue to go in this direction until I had a key to open up that door. So this area would be blocked off. And there are also these eyeballs, which are features, and they will also block progress in certain directions until you choose to encounter one of those and have a random encounter. So while you do need to encounter each one of those doors, monsters, and features, you have a choice of when you want to do them and which one you want to do. So you might have all three laid out like that, maybe like that. And you might say, okay, I want to go over here and encounter this feature first, because maybe I can get a bonus to fight the monster. And then maybe I can get some XP to buy a key to unlock that door. So again, it's in this map creation process, this puzzle-like element of these tile placements, and offering these choices to the player in how they wish to proceed. And these encounters are one of the other reasons how this game feels a little bit different. And that actually has to do with the art on these cards, the art on the monsters, the art in just everything in this game, even the art on the character cards, has a pastoral feel. It's kind of whimsical, soft, muted colors, a very kind of European comic book feel. And so it gives the game just a very different kind of vibe. It's a very kind of non-aggressive vibe, I think you could say. Some really cool, evocative images that, while it can be creepy and while there are monsters and spooky things to discover, the game just feels really inviting, and even in the violence feels a little more subdued. I don't know. It's a really interesting vibe, and that is all because of this art. The art is absolutely gorgeous. The art was done by, I think I forgot to mention the artist's name when I originally did my review. So the art here is done by Marion Churchland. Just absolutely fantastic art. I love their work so much. It does make me want to explore the game and really get into its world and its lore and learn about the different ecologies and how everything fits together. Very inviting. And I really do dig that kind of chill vibe that the art gives. And then also the combat. So yes, there is combat in this game. That is another kind of normal thing that we are doing in a game, in a dungeon crawl. But the combat is also a little bit different. And part of the reason why it is different is it is card-based rather than dice-based. But there also is kind of this trade-off that you are doing in how you are dealing damage and how you are taking damage. And again, there is this element of choice and this little kind of puzzle-like nature. So combat in the game is determined by a deck of cards. Your characters will have a deck of cards that will have different attacks on there. The art is just there for artistic purposes, but I do like it. It kind of represents the strikes, and it will have different powers, and those powers are the damage. And if you play a card that has a higher number than the monster, because the monsters also have a deck of cards, the monsters have level 1 cards, level 2 cards, and level 3 cards. And so you might deal out, at the beginning of the game, you're going to shuffle your action deck. And then at the beginning of combat, you're going to draw 3 cards. You're going to look at the cards you drew. Okay, a 4, a 5, and a 3. Not great. You're going to choose 2 cards, probably. Most of the time, you're going to be choosing 2 cards to attack with. And then the enemy is going to take their cards, and they are going to also deal 2 cards. So you're going to deal those like that and like that. And then you're going to look for the results. So if the monster has a higher result than you do, that triggers first, and the monster attacks you. The next thing that triggers are blocks. So blocks if they are the same. So these would block. And the final thing that triggers in a combat round would be if your hero has a higher total than the monster. So this would be a hit for my hero if this block wasn't here. 5 versus 3. I would do 5 damage. But then there is automatic return damage that is the difference between the 2 cards. So if you played like a really powerful attack here, like let's say you played one of your 8s and the monster retaliated with a 3, well, you would do 8 damage to that monster, but that monster would do 5 damage back to you. So you kind of have to think about, do you want to go for a really powerful attack and possibly leave yourself open to a big counterattack? Or do you want to just kind of chip away and do less damage, but also maybe have less of a chance of getting pounded in a counterattack? And I do really like that. As your character progresses, you can unlock these other action cards to add to your action deck. And these are going to be unlocked by getting different treasure. And as you play through the game, you will also have the ability to unlock treasure. And the loot system is another kind of way that this game is a little bit different, because each of the characters has their own unique loot deck that you are going to be able to draw from at certain points during the game. And you're going to be kind of finding your character's iconic gear, iconic equipment to kind of like make them look like their character, which is super cool. So you might find that helmet and maybe her axe, her cool looking sword there, or that axe, this serrated battle axe, or the girdle of power, the branded oak shield, or the heavy broadsword. And then those will coincide to unlocking those more powerful items. And then also each of the characters also has their own unique ability deck that you can use. You can buy new skills in order to make your character more powerful as you are progressing through the various floors of the dungeon. So as you can see, the game does all of the things, has all of the elements of things that we like in these games, but each one has a small little twist to it that overall makes the game stand out. It makes the game feel different. But none of those twists are so outlandish or so clever as to make the game more difficult to learn. So none of the twists, none of the little wrinkles, none of the new folds in the mechanisms feel too clever or too outlandish or too out there. They all point strongly back to that core theme of this being a dungeon adventure game, and a game that is more concerned in thematically with exploration and mapping and the adventure, rather than that crunchy kind of trap avoiding, monster fighting, loot gathering crawl that we are more used to. I love just about everything about playing the game, and the way it looks and the way I feel while I am playing it. It's a kind of a chill game that gives off this really inviting vibe that I am super, super into. What I am not into, though, is the size of the box and the size of the rule book. And We're going to talk about that next. Okay, now let's talk about box size. Box size is super important for a game. And we have two examples here. So this portion of this look at Forgotten Depths was recorded before the detailed look at the game because I wanted to illustrate a point. But I didn't want to start off that video with this somewhat negative criticism of the game. So we have two boxes here, Forgotten Depths and Stars of Icarios. The boxes are relatively similar in size. The Forgotten Depths box is just a little bit smaller than the Stars of Icarios box in every dimension. It's about, I don't know, about an inch, inch and a half, not quite as tall, a couple inches, not quite as wide, but it is almost as long. Stars of Icarios, the contents of this box, it is completely jam-packed. I mean, just all the way, packed to the gills, packed to the rim, filled to the rim with stuff. This thing is heavy. This is a huge, epic game with tons of stuff packed into this game. Forgotten Depths is a somewhat small card game. This game could have been part of my big game in a small box series, but instead what we have here is we have a small game in a giant box. And this box does not represent the game very well. If I was at a game store and I saw this box, I would expect the game to be a much bigger production than it is. The box is nice, it looks nice, it has nice graphics and text and everything, but I just find the box size for this game to be incredibly obnoxious. But that is not the most obnoxious thing about this game. The most obnoxious thing is this rulebook. Look at the size of this rulebook. What were they thinking? Here is a 4 Against Darkness book, a kind of a normal trade size book. Look at the size difference on this thing. This is the most unwieldy to read rulebook, the most obnoxiously sized rulebook I have ever seen in all of my decades of gaming. And when you start looking through it, you realize that it was produced in the wrong size, because you would think that a book this big would have nice big text to read, but no, the text is still super small. And there is so much white space, so much empty space. Look at this. Almost an entire page, like 3/5 of this page are completely blank on this absolutely massive giant rulebook that flops all around. It takes up like half of my table to read. I feel like I'm reading an old copy of the New York Times whenever I open this stupid rulebook up. I don't get this at all. It's absolutely ridiculous. But I don't even think that's the most ridiculous thing, because inside this giant box with this small game, we have all the components, okay? I'm going to take them all out. I mean, look, first of all, look at how much wasted space is in here with this stupid plastic insert. I'm going to take everything out here, okay? Everything can come out. Plastic mini for some reason. Okay, so if we take all of the stuff out and we remove this giant piece of plastic, and then we put everything in the box here. Let's put in this stuff first here, down there, put that in, put that in, put that. Okay, this game could have fit in a box a 1/5 of the size, practically. As a matter of fact, if we take this small box here for Paper Dungeons, a very tiny little game, and we start putting in the contents of Forgotten Realms, or Forgotten Depths, I should say. Sorry about that. This game actually fits completely with room to spare in this small box. And now I'm thinking, okay, so maybe I get rid of this giant box and put the game in a small box. Well, then what the hell am I going to do with this? Just ridiculous. And then okay, I could download the PDF for this, and you do that, and you print it out in a nice little normal size rulebook that most games come with. And the text is so tiny that you can't even read it because it's laid out in this giant, absolutely ridiculous size. So this here, this giant box, that stupid plastic insert, like the board game industry has got to divorce itself from its love affair with plastic. We need to be more responsible for the amount of plastic we as consumers are responsible. We don't need those that big plastic insert that is just a complete waste of space in here. And I know, because I know the reason why. The Peter, the designer, he listened to all the people who like to sleeve their cards. But even when you sleeve your cards, that whole plastic insert is still not needed. You could easily just have your cards in a smaller box, in like a long box. But the whole idea of sleeving cards is just so much plastic. I'm actually in the process right now of unsleeving all of my cards. As a matter of fact, I have started unsleeving all of my cards. There's some sleeves from Dungeon Degenerates and Island of D, a couple smaller games also. I'm unsleeving all of my cards, and I'm going to donate my sleeves to the local game store. So hopefully they can give my sleeves away to other people, so people don't have to buy new sleeves. Because I'm trying to be more conscious of the amount of plastic I am responsible for as a gamer. But yeah, just this huge box. This box actually, it won't fit on one of those what are the Calyx shelves, the IKEA shelves that everybody uses. It won't fit like this. It's too wide. If you put it in like this, it sticks out. Yeah, I don't know why nobody told Peter no. Like, I think that's one of the pitfalls of Kickstarter, is you don't have project managers. You don't have people who are overseeing the production, the development of the physical product of your game. You don't have a manager there to say no. And I think this whole size of this box, the whole just overly produced hunk of plastic insert, nobody said no. Yeah, this was pretty upsetting to me. Just all this space. I was really looking forward to this small game fitting on my shelf in my small game cubby. But now it's a giant game that I have nowhere to put. I'm not sure where it's going to go. And it's really hard to put in a small box because of this stupid manual, and I don't know where that's going to go. But yeah, this did taint my feelings overall of the game. The game is good. The art is good. There are some really cool things about the game. I'm glad that it exists. But thinking about how your game is presented, how your game is stored on people's shelves, the amount of wasted space that you can get rid of, just people need to think about that. I want designers to think about that more. So sorry to end this video on Forgotten Depths on such a downer note, but I'm sure my first part of this video where I'm talking about the game will be much more positive. So, all right, guys, we'll take it easy. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.